Well, this is a JXD V3, fresh from the mailbox, which is why it's a bit bruised and battered looking. This is a portable media player that also doubles up as a games console. So essentially it can play MP3s, it can play videos, and it can play a host of emulated games. So inside the box is another box, which is quite a funky little flip over thing. There's the actual JXD V3 itself. But before that, you do get a number of accessories with it. You get a TV out cable, a standard USB cable, a charger, which unfortunately doesn't come with a EU or UK adapter, but again it's standard USB, so that shouldn't be a big issue. And then get a pair of headphones, for some reason in a very white bag, a sticker, a warranty card which is entirely in Chinese, a quick start guide which is entirely in Chinese, and a manual, which thankfully does actually have an English section. The manual isn't too bad. The quality of the English is a bit variable, but the basics do come through, and it's nice and detailed on how to do various things with the machine, such as changing languages, using the various play and pause back features, how to get the emulators up and running, etc. So here's the V3 out of the box. It's fairly nice and shiny looking and nice and light. On the side you've got the USB AV out and headphone sockets, as well as a microphone. On the back you've got a state-of-the-art 2.0 megapixel camera and a bunch of instructions on what sort of voltage you should be using. It's got a slot in the side for micro SD cards and a reset button, and on the back it's just got the hinge. It's fairly small and light. It's roughly the same size as a DS Lite, but considerably lighter in weight. Slightly thinner, and pretty much the same sort of thickness. And this is a V3 when it's been opened. So you've got the controls visible, you've got the screen. The screen clicks into a fairly laid back position. That's the only position it clicks into. And it's pretty much flat, so might be a bit difficult to actually watch anything when it's positioned at that angle. The controls on the device are more than a little inspired by the PSP. You've got the D-pad, a little analogue nub, select and start buttons, and 4 buttons with symbols on that look very familiar. And then you've also got a couple of device specific things. You've got the power button, volume control, and the camera. So if you hold the power button down for a second or two, it starts up. And the start time is fairly quick and reasonable. Once the machine's started up, you then get into the main menu. There's 21 icons on here, though the bottom 7 don't do anything. And all the icons have Chinese labels. And while you can go into the settings menu and change the language to English, that only affects menu items, it doesn't affect the main screen. So this is permanently Chinese. Fortunately, the icons are reasonably easy to figure out. So starting at the top left, you have the joypad icon, which is for games, or more specifically emulators, since the JXD V3 supports a number of emulators. These can be roughly divided into 3 families. You have the Game Boy family, so Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. You have the Sega 8-bit and 16-bit games. So you have the Master System and the Sega Mega Drive, or Sega Genesis. And then you have the Super NES, or Super Famicom. And here we have Earthworm Jim on the Game Boy. One of the first things you notice is that all the screens are stretched to fit the 16:9 resolution on the V3 rather than the original 4:3. But so far as it goes, the emulation seems reasonably solid for the Game Boy. To quit out of an emulator, you press the power button to get out a pop-up menu, and the upward facing arrow returns you to the main screen. The control pad works reasonably well. The button's a little on the firm side, and having the lip just to the side of the D-pad might be a bit annoying for some people, but it didn't actually interfere with my playing, and the controls work reasonably well. So moving on from there, you then have the video playback capabilities, and for some reason best known to JXD, their primary demonstration video for this is Moving away from political broadcasts, we have a variety of things to test on here. This is a MPEG file, so old video CD style. And I've set the player not to stretch the video. That can be changed in the settings. The video playback is nice and clear. You then have a DivX file. And then we have an MP4 file. Moving on, you then have the music playback capabilities, and again the unit has a set of sample files included. Audio quality is reasonable. It's a bit on the tinny side, but acceptable for a little speaker. And one of the nice things is that the music can continue to play while you're doing other things on the machine, to an extent. If you actually go into the camera mode or games, obviously it'll stop. You then have the ability to look at images on the machine. And here's some images of dubious copyright. You have an ebook reader which just does text files. You have the ability to record movies with the built-in 2 megapixel camera, and an actual camera application as well. I won't go through the camera since it's fairly basic. At 2 megapixels it's not going to do anything too impressive, but just so you know, here are some photos I took earlier of my amazing fish tank. And a photo hanging on the wall. Picture quality is reasonable, but to be honest, you've probably got a much better camera built into your mobile phone. The machine also has a built-in FM radio receiver, though as with most of these it requires an external aerial in the shape of a pair of headphones to be plugged in, because otherwise you don't get a good enough signal. You then have an application to access the microphone that's built onto the underside of the unit. Testing 1 2 3. You then have the TV out option, and this machine doesn't support any HD resolutions, it just has component out. And if you go into there, you get an option of PAL or NTSC, but best off only doing that when it's actually plugged into a TV, because the machine will then turn its own display off and you'll have to reset it to get back to the main menu, which is what I did about 30 seconds ago. You then have a simple alarm application, which I haven't tested. I'm assuming you can turn the main unit off and let it sleep. But to be honest, I've already got an alarm clock. You then have a calendar application, which unfortunately doesn't let you edit the calendar or add notes to it. So it's literally just a calendar. And then you have the settings menu. So you can change the language and supports English, various forms of Chinese and Spanish. Set the date and time. One limitation of this machine is that while it does support external memory cards, you can put a micro SD card into the side, anything up to 16 gig, possibly up to 32 gig. While you can do that, the machine can only see the internal memory or the external memory. It can't see both at the same time. And also the applications can only see your files if they're in the same directory structure as on the internal memory. i.e. you have to have a audio directory, a video directory, a games directory, etc. And to switch between them you have to go into the memory option and tell it which one you want to be the working space, aka the active system. And then you have the last two menu items, which are the speaker option to allow you to disable the built-in speaker, and the ability to set how long it takes before the screen is turned off when you're sitting in the menus without doing anything. And then you have the file manager, which works in the way you pretty much expect it to. You can see all the folders on your storage, whether that's internal or external. You can navigate to them. And if you click on a file, it will automatically load the appropriate application to do something with it. And that's about all she wrote for the little device. Overall, I'd say I was actually reasonably impressed with the JXD V3. The video playback is good quality, the screen is protected by the clamshell design, so it's perfect for travelling. The emulated games all seem to work reasonably well, that may well depend upon the actual ROMs that you try. The D-pad and buttons are firm but work surprisingly well. And it can also do music, it's got the built-in microphone, camera, etc. So it's actually capable of being reasonably useful as a multimedia device. Oh no, it's worth having a play with.